am super excited today. I'm excited to introduce Eric Wilson. Eric Wilson is a political technologist driving innovation and digital transformation. He's a veteran of numerous campaigns, having led Marco Rubio's digital team during the 2016 campaign for president. He's served as the digital director for Ed Gillespie's campaign for Virginia governor in 2017 and the U.S. Senate in 2014. He's advised on the digital strategy for the National Republican Senatorial Campaign in 2016. Eric is the managing partner of Startup Caucus, an investment fund for a startup accelerator for Republican campaign technology. Buzz360 is a portfolio company, and we were actually one of the first in the first cohort for the Startup Caucus, and have been working with Eric ever since. So that's been about 4 years.
Yeah,
it seems like it's been just yesterday. It's gone so fast.
I know, it's gone by fast.
Yeah. Most recently, Eric sat down with Politico for a lengthy interview about AI and politics. So when we get started here, I'm going to turn it over to Eric. And I will be putting everybody that's not on mute, and then we'll get started. After Eric has talks a little bit about AI and politics, he will take some questions and answers. And then I will close up with just a little bit about Buzz360 and some exciting things that we're doing. Eric has a wealth of knowledge, and I know we'll all benefit from today's session. So Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, Lisa, and hey, everyone. Great to be here. Glad to be with folks and talk to you about artificial intelligence, AI. I'm still, we are right at the front of the mine right now, still trying to figure out how this works, how this goes. So rather than putting down a presentation, I wanted to chat through kind of like the latest thoughts that I have on artificial intelligence, the latest on what I'm seeing out in the campaign field. Quick plug for the Learn, Test, Optimize newsletter. If you go to learntestoptimize.com, I'm always including news stories about how AI is being used in campaigns there, if you want to keep up with it. And so a lot of these insights are derived from the stories that we're seeing there. So first, I think it's important that we take stock of what's happening. So anyone who's a fan of science fiction has known that artificial intelligence has been around for a long time. We can go back to HAL 9000 and 2001: A Space Odyssey. And we've always known that this sort of idea of a artificial intelligence was going to come. It's always been something bad like RoboCop or Terminator or something like that. But the fact is, we have been using artificial intelligence in campaigns for a while now. Artificial intelligence is a broad umbrella of a discipline within computer science. But what we've been using the most below that is called machine learning. So this is a branch of artificial intelligence where we feed it lots of data, and the application then makes very well-educated decisions about that data. So one of the most common applications that everyone will be familiar with is voter modeling. So when we are trying to model, how a voter file or an electorate thinks about an issue, what we do is we go out and record observations through a poll, through texting, through door knocks, whatever the input will be. And then based on what we know about those voters that we spoke to, whether it's just a few thousand, we can then extrapolate that out onto the rest of the voter file. And that's how we do voter modeling. It's through machine learning. So we say, this person shares these attributes with this person who said that they were favorable to the Republican candidate. So we're going to mark them as a likely Republican. It's especially helpful in states like Virginia, where I live, where we don't have party registration on the voter file. So we can only model whether we think someone's a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. Another area where you've seen artificial intelligence used through machine learning is with Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. So any social media feed that is algorithmically driven is using machine learning. So they look at all of the posts that are getting posted on any given day. They look at how it's interacting with users, because remember, they're optimizing for keeping users on that platform, on that site. So they're looking at the data, say, okay, posts like this keep people on the site, so we're going to show more posts like this. We also see this with ad optimization on Facebook and Google. So when we put up dozens of different variations of the same creative, we're trying to optimize for that algorithm that's using machine learning, again, branch of artificial intelligence, to select the one with the red button over the blue button, or the shorter text over the longer text. And so we've been doing this for a long time. So whenever people are talking about the dangers of artificial intelligence in politics, I always point out that this is nothing new. What is new is called generative AI, and this is what we have known for a while as what's been called deep fakes. So the ability to turn a video and make it make someone say something that they didn't really say, or create an image that looks very realistic but is actually false. The artificial intelligence is able to generate something new. Where it really exploded in the last year or so was with the introduction of ChatGPT from OpenAI. So this company, made a version of their artificial intelligence available for people to use, and that has just really fired the starting gun on generative AI. So that's why we're having all these conversations right now about AI. It really starts with the potential of deep fakes, so what we call synthetic media, generated media, and really smart chat agents. So how does this all work? Let me give you kind of a very basic layman's introduction to artificial intelligence, how this works. And so if I have any computer scientists or developers here, just give me a pass, because I know I'm doing short shrift on the technology here. So generative AI, so ChatGPT, Google's Bard, any of these other programs that you've seen that you can type in instructions to and it provides you a response or an image, or does some sort of data analysis, is really, 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 really good autocomplete. They train the program on lots and lots of data, and then its objective is to fill in the blank with what it thinks goes next. So think about when you're on Google search or on your iPhone, and there's autocomplete. Type in your favorite athlete or politician in Google, and there are going to be some suggestions that come up, Eric Wilson net worth, Eric Wilson married, those kind of auto suggestions. Well, that is what generative AI has taken to the next level. It starts with training on these large data sets. So this is where some of the companies have gotten into trouble, because they go out and take copywritten work, like other people's books, news articles, things like that, and train the database on all this information. So think about, if you could walk into a library and memorize all of the books, right? That's basically what's happening there. So you've got this foundation. That's what we call a large language model. So we're at the point now with computers that we can quickly process, store, and affordably store all of this data. So within these large language models, what we call LLMs, there's fine tuning. So it can be taught to do specific tasks like writing social media posts, creating images, transcribing things, when we provide it with specific data. So what you're seeing right now is a lot of these large language models being made available for people. They're coming in and fine tuning it with their own data. And then this is where we come in and are using it most often as lay people. We're writing prompts. So we're going into the program, whether that's to create an image or to create a draft email, and saying, pretend you are a political candidate getting ready to announce your run for Congress. Write a speech for 30 minutes. That's 30 minutes long. And then you hit enter on that and it does some thinking, and then it produces some sort of output. Now, some of it may be good, some of it may be gobbledygook. Remember, it is not necessarily thinking, it's just trying to fill in that next blank that it sees. So the more specific you can be in that prompt, the more details you can provide, the better the output's going to be. So for people like you and me, where we are right now, it's learning how to write the prompt. So think about back in the early days of search engines, if you're old enough to remember that like me, you had to put in quotation marks and ands and ors, and you had to be really good at that Boolean search because it was bad at interpreting what you wanted. So, you know, if you typed in the word LEAD, it didn't know if you were looking about the element lead or how to be a good leader. And so you had to provide additional, instructions on that. That's really where we are with AI right now, is learning how to interface with it. And so how are we using it for campaigns right now? The reason I spent a lot of time talking about how we got here and what's going on is so you appreciate just how early we are. So if you are on this webinar and you're saying, look, I don't even know what ChatGPT is, I don't recognize half of the things that Eric has said just now, don't worry, because it's brand new. We've only seen kind of the first tip of the iceberg. So a lot of what you're seeing come out, I think, is hype. So and then of course in the media you see a lot of focus on sort of fear mongering of this could be used to disrupt elections and create fake news and all of this sort of stuff. What's really happening is much more mundane. So let me give you a few examples. So I would say every campaign or political professional that I know is playing around with artificial intelligence when it comes to first drafts of emails, press releases, TV scripts, questionnaires for polls, social media posts. They're treating this, whether it's ChatGPT or Bard. Those are two of the main, sort of chat AIs out there right now. They're using that as kind of the first draft for getting something on the page. As far as I know, and I certainly wouldn't advise this, no one is just copying and pasting what the agents are putting out and then putting it on their website or putting it out to their email list or putting it on Facebook. So really good at kind of those first drafts, something that you would normally give to an intern and maybe get back 2 hours later. This is happening instantly. So that's one way that we're starting to see it be used. Second is to create images, stock photography and designs. So the RNC, the Republican National Committee, put out an ad when Joe Biden announced he was running for re-election that used imagined stock imagery generated by artificial intelligence. There have been some other use cases where people have created an image. We haven't really seen too many uses where people create a video that was imagined. There was one instance where we saw an ad that used recorded words of President Trump and created a video from that. In all of those cases, it's important to know that those were disclosed. So if you are going to use, what people call synthetic media, so things like videos or stock imagery, you should disclose that and make sure that that's known and people know that you're creating an image. And then the third area where we're seeing a lot of people use it are with transcription and facial recognition. One of the things that I've been building on here at Bullpen Strategy Group is a product called Minotaur, which uses artificial intelligence to transcribe videos, do facial recognition. So for groups that are doing video tracking, let's say, of candidates, we can go through and generate transcripts automatically, and we can find other videos that our targets may have been in. So it's being used very widely across the spectrum. I see we've got some questions coming in. Tasha, good note. I will try and find a link for that, and we can send that around. And that's a good note. Appreciate you flagging that. So what are some ways that you can start using artificial intelligence in your campaign right now? So or even in your just sort of professional context, whether you're on a campaign or thinking about running. I think first, try out ChatGPT or Bard. They're both free services. You just have to create an account. Bard is Google's chat agent. So again, this is where you go in and you say, help me write an email draft, help me write a press release. I will make a note that most companies have a policy that they don't do political work. So that's one of the things that, Lisa and the other startups that I work with, I'm advising them, if they're going to be building on artificial intelligence, that they need to have their own models with their own training, rather than relying on one of these third parties that can cut off their access. But you as an individual can go in and try and get it to give you output, and it may say, look, I don't do political. If you just change your prompt a little bit, it might give you an answer. So anytime you're set up with a blank page and you need to write something, turn to ChatGPT or Bard. That's really the best way to get used to using this. Again, we're in the very early days of this. If you're an early adopter, like I know you are because you're on a webinar with Buzz360, then just try it out, start playing around with it. If you are creating videos for your campaign, or maybe you have a podcast for your campaign, you're giving interviews, going on radio, there are a number of tools out there that will transcribe audio and video and then turn it into all kinds of social media content. So what previously would have taken a team of social media editors, you can use artificial intelligence to do very quickly. A couple of apps that are worth checking out. One is called Recast Studio. The other is called Descript. And these are great for creating videos that then go out on Instagram and Facebook or YouTube. If you've got, let's say, an hour-long forum that you did over Zoom, it'll go in and snip out the right parts for you. And so now you've created really good social content for your campaign or your organization. And then lastly, if you're feeling really adventurous, identify the data that you might have that could be used to fine-tune a large language model. So again, everyone has the real gold rush right now is what's the data that I have that no one else does, because you know, the intelligence, the finding the patterns, that's cheap now because we have AI. It's that data that you're creating, that you're sourcing, that is valuable. And the last thing I would flag for you, if you have, you know, different tasks that are taking up a lot of time, but they're repeatable, or something that you can automate, people are building so many new tools all the time. Definitely keep an eye out, you know, whether that's on Twitter or Facebook or going to websites like Product Hunt, where people are sharing the new things that they're building. That would be a great way. You know, if you've got a problem or a headache, you know, like that you think AI can solve, chances are someone is building some sort of tool around that. So the second one I mentioned was Descript. Descript. I'm spelling that out for you. So with that, I want to pause and take questions. Happy to answer some examples, and then while you're teeing that up, Lisa, I'll find that video for Tasha real quick.
Well, great, Eric. I actually have some questions.
Yeah.
So are there tools that that people can use to identify what's been created on AI and what's, you know, been created natively?
Yeah. So this is you can imagine the school year that we just got out of last year. So everyone's back to school now. You have ChatGPT come online kind of in the middle of the fall semester. Teachers, professors were just really frustrated I mean, it was clear that students were using AI to do their assignments. So that was the particular use case where people are trying to figure out if there's, you know, plagiarism. Was this just generated by an AI? There is not an accurate way to do that. It, you know, it generates a lot of false positives. Where you can catch it is if people are just copying and pasting from the window in ChatGPT into their document, because it'll do things like, as the best of my memory, by September 2021, right? Because they had kind of a cutoff date. And so you'll get stuff like that, or it'll say, as a large language model, I can't do that. If people just copy and paste that, that's a dead giveaway. But if you're thinking about using it for your campaign or maybe your business, as long as you are editing it, there's not going to be, you know, much for people to sort of key off on that. A big warning, though, it will hallucinate facts. So if you are citing facts that it has generated, you can also ask it to cite its sources. That's one thing you can add to the prompts. Those are the two areas where you need to be careful. But for the most part, people can't tell as long as you're adding your own polish to it. Okay.
You look what you're looking at, and I just want to add something, because we do use, I mean, I do use chat, you know, GP as a tool that we use for writing blog posts or social media, those kinds of things. And I do want to caution people on this call, because I have gone in and written, you know, asked it a question. Would you write a blog post about relational organizing used on the right or on the left? And it's interesting because I know for sure that relational is different on the right than it is on the left. And chat gave me almost identical answers. So it's not something you just put something in, like Eric said, copy and paste it and use it, because there is some inherent flaws in that at this early stage. So that's just one example I wanted to give out to everybody, because everybody's excited about it. Everybody's nervous about it. And like, I mean, I'm old enough to remember the internet, right? And the internet was going to change the world, and it did change the world, but everything was going to be disaster. Y2K, everything was going to fall apart. And I believe that we're at the spot in AI the same way we were with those technologies. You know, it'll all kind of come to a normalization, and we'll figure out how to use it and use it correctly. So I'm going to pass it back over to you, Eric.
Yeah, so I wanted to share this ad. This is from the RNC, the Republican National Committee. All of the images that you see here, and you'll note in the upper right-hand screen, these are synthetic images, so they're created with AI.
Just in, now call the 2024 presidential race for Joe Biden. This morning, an emboldened China invades Taiwan. Financial markets are in free fall as 500 regional banks have shuttered their doors.
Border agents were overrun by a surge of 80,000 illegals yesterday evening.
Officials closed the city of San Francisco this morning, bringing the escalating crime in no places. Who's in charge here? It feels like the train is coming off the tracks. This just is.
So a couple of things to note here is that they did disclose it. I don't think I can emphasize this enough. If you are, I believe that we have a moral obligation, that if you are creating images or videos that are not real, that you share those with voters and are very clear about that. We you know, as political practitioners, will lose the moral high ground on using the tech if we don't do that, and it's misleading to the voters. But a couple of things just to note, you know, as you're trying to think about, well, how do you tell the difference? You know, the quality is getting better every single day, but you can see that this is not his real face. It's a little plastic. But there was one dead giveaway that I caught on this watch through. I think of yeah. So this guy here, something's going on with his head. This person's face is off. You can see that this is these, you know, if you look closely and know what to look for, particularly with details of humans, that's when you can tell if an image was created artificially or not. If you can see it, usually fingers are a dead giveaway. AI likes to add fingers to human hands. So those are some tricks that I've learned on how to detect AI images.
They add fingers?
Yeah, so it's very strange. They'll just, you know, you'll have 6 fingers on this hand or 7 fingers on a hand.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah. Something in the, you know, and this is a good reminder that it can hallucinate and add. It is generating. It's not going out and just reporting. It is actually creating.
Interesting. One of the questions, I think we have a few more minutes to ask Eric some questions about AI or, you know, digital for politics, because he, like I said to begin with, he is a wealth of very good knowledge, and we use him as an advisor all the time. So if you have any other questions, you can put them in the chat at this point.
Yeah, one thing I would add, and just talking about how I'm using artificial intelligence personally. So if you're subscribed to my newsletter, my podcast, I am using AI. You know, I previously would have to go in and buy stock photos for all my blog posts. Now I'm using artificial intelligence to create my own stock images, and I can show some examples of those. Again, not necessarily political, but I think good examples of what that looks like. Let me go. Let me share, you know, I'm by no means an artist on this stuff yet, but you know, my blog template needs these photos. And so you know, this is one of a campaign rally that I created, and you can do different styling. This is, you know, a cartoon I made of Joe Biden. Here's kind of a fake signature. I'm having a lot of fun playing around with this. You know, so here's an email about pop-ups. Here's an octopus placing ads. So it's kind of fun to play around with this. And it means I can go out and do things that are more creative than just stock images, stock photos. Another thing that I use it for, so I have the Business of Politics show. I use an AI service to transcribe that, so it's easier for people to read, find on the internet. But then what it does is it goes and it creates these AI videos. And let me pull up an example of that one real quick.
And Kasha, while he's pulling that up, I will answer your question. You're asking, we're crafting weekly did you know messages to send out via our Swipe Red, Buzz 360 Swipe Red, and it seems like it might be a good use for AI. It absolutely is a good use. Just make sure that you read it after you generate it, because sometimes it doesn't make sense. So just make sure that you do read that.
So I just shared a link there, and so I'll share an example of a video. I haven't posted this yet, so it's or maybe so it's a little bit of a preview for the crowd here. But so this takes the audio from my podcast.
As marketing, and marketing is typically an expense over, a revenue driver. But I think the point that you make about can you turn.
And so what this is from Recast Studio, which is one that I mentioned earlier, is it transcribed it. So it gave me all the words. It identified this piece of the conversation as being interesting, so I didn't have to listen to the whole thing again, and turned it into a video. And now I can share this on social media, and drive more listens to my podcast. So those are a couple of the ways that I'm using this in my day-to-day life, just professionally. If I were on a campaign right now, when I do trainings for Leadership Institute and state caucuses and things like this, I always emphasize this idea of you want to, think of content that you're creating on a campaign as a buffalo. So you're taking every piece of it that you possibly can. Nothing goes to waste. And so that TV interview or that radio interview, that gets turned into email, that gets turned into social media posts, that gets turned into a video of different forms. 2 years ago, when I was telling people to do this, that meant spending a lot of time creating content. Today, that means just putting the content into one of these artificial intelligence applications. You're paying a little bit each month, but you're generating tons of social media content instantly. And so it's a really exciting time to be a candidate and working on campaigns. So I want to take Tasha's example here and maybe just to elaborate or work with you on how I might put that together. So I don't know what kind of campaign or something that you're working on, but let's just say you're helping get a candidate elected. Candidate gave a speech or gave an interview. Upload that to Otter, some other service to transcribe that. Let's say it was just an audio interview. Transcribe that, and then you get a text. You go back to your Chat GPT and say, read the following interview and draft an email to our supporters about it. Boom, that email now comes out. You've got it to your supporter. You say, okay, based on this transcript, create 3 to 5 talking points in bullet format that I can send out through Swipe Red, right? So those are the examples of how you can take your underlying piece of data, which is that interview, and then create all this other stuff that you then get in front of your voters. Question here from John: what kinds of things can a local campaign easily do with AI to improve voter ID and persuasion? For example, can AI work directly on spreadsheets or a database to parse a voter file into different voter universes? What can AI do to incorporate voter ID calls, door knocks, direct mail contacts, et cetera, in a central data hub? So the in this case, you would need a more specialized professional who understands data modeling and things like this to get your to do your modeling. But what you can do with something like Buzz 360 and Swipe Red is identify with artificial intelligence who the most optimal people are that you need to talk to. So take your voter file from the state GOP that you get from GOP Data Center or whatever platform you may be using, put it into your Swipe Red, and then that uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to identify this, and then you're creating the message. So my answer to you, John, would be this is all about being able to create the content right now to do that voter ID and persuasion. So generating, I know it's hard to come up with 15 variations of the same "please vote for me" message, but that's where AI comes in handy because it doesn't get sick of that. And it doesn't lose creativity. So again, it'll be inspiration. Beyond that, all this ETL, edit, transfer, and loading of files, that starts to get into a little bit more complex than what AI can handle right now. Paul, question. I'm a campaign manager. How do you respond to the worries that people have concerning AI? Loss of jobs, loss of needs for volunteers, et cetera. That's a really good question. I got asked this at a panel, surprisingly enough, about art and is artificial intelligence really art? And I said, I think if you put us in your time machine and went back, 150 years to the advent of photography, we would have a room where we were discussing all these painters who are going to lose their jobs. Photography isn't art. Who's going to paint the family portrait? We're going to be without jobs. Well, we still have painters, we still have artists, and we all agree that photography is art, or can be art, I should say. That's my first thing, is there's always a disruption with technology, with new technology being introduced. But then you see kind of this, it becomes just part of life. So the thing I always say is, on campaigns, in the 1960s, you had a phone department, right? That was actually a team that was responsible for making sure that the phones worked on campaigns and that you could call voters. We don't have phone departments anymore. Everyone just uses phones. I think, when something is new, we pay more attention to it. So there's that. The promise I see in artificial intelligence for those that learn how to use it is higher, better uses of their time. So for me, getting my ideas into a first draft, if that can save me an hour of my time, that's another hour I get to help a campaign working on, reaching voters or doing those calls. To the point about volunteers, we are never not going to need volunteers, particularly for the reason that Lisa and Klaus work every single day, which is relational organizing. So when it becomes, let's say, free or cheap to generate messages to voters, the only thing that distinguishes them is who they're coming from. And so I answer text messages from Lisa, my friends, because I have a relationship with them. I can't tell you how many unopened campaign emails and campaign texts I have on my phone right now and have probably come in since I've been talking to everyone. The relationships that your volunteers and your supporters have are what's going to be valuable in this new era. So go back 4 years ago, before we even had artificial intelligence, the reason Startup Caucus invested in Swipe Red and Buzz 360 was because we were seeing these diminishing rates of contacts on phones, at the doors, email open rates. We just weren't able to reach voters. But if you can get a friend to reach out to a voter, you cut through the noise like a hot knife through butter. And it is, that's where the volunteers. So you got a little bit of a sermon there, Paul. You got me worked up. But that's why I'm excited about artificial intelligence, because we get to free up our volunteers to do the stuff that they enjoy doing and are good at, not the the mundane stuff. Although I think we'll always be licking envelopes. Joe, I think raises a good point here. Let me just read it for everyone. I would think that submitting some more confidential information, such as campaign strategies, to the generative engine can be risky. Are there yet private partisan platforms that can protect these sort of information? So that is a really good point that you need to be aware of. So by default, if you're using ChatGPT or Bard, you are helping to train the underlying large language model. It's the same rule with social media. If you're not paying for it, you are the product. And so in this case, if you are not paying for it, you are the product, and they're learning from your data. That's why I really for things like content that you are going to share publicly anyways, I think it's a great platform to use. Because the time that it would take for that to be incorporated and then possibly get out, you've already posted it, right? There is the issue of platforms not allowing political campaigns and certain political use cases. And so that's where we are looking for companies that are building their own model. So one company I'll highlight called Localist.ai is designed for Republican campaigns to help write emails, and that is a trusted provider that has trained their own large language model, and not sharing your data with Democrats, your data sticking with Republicans. So it's something that we're thinking about. The good thing is the tools are just getting easier and easier to use every single day, and a lot of this is open sourced, so you can build your own version. So it's a good flag. So just know that if you are if you are a competitor with Microsoft, for example, I would not be putting any proprietary company data into ChatGPT and OpenAI, which is partnered with Microsoft, because they will have access to that. Now, whether they notice it because they're getting a lot of data, it's a needle in the haystack, is another thing, but good point.
I think we can take one more question, and then I'm going to wrap up with a little bit about what Buzz 360 is doing right now.
Yeah, well, this was a great group, Lisa. I appreciate all the good questions. Did someone have a question? I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Okay. I don't see any more questions in the chat. And I am going to, like I said, wrap up with a little bit about, I'm not going to talk about Swipe Red because unfortunately we had Larimore County in Colorado talk a little bit about that, and Eric talked a little bit about that. So I'm really happy that came up because it is near and dear to my heart. But what I am going to talk about a little bit about Ballot Chase, because we're just coming out with some brand new functionality that we are using in Virginia right now, and it's very exciting to us. But I just wanted to make sure, if you haven't subscribed to Eric's newsletter, he sends out 2 newsletters every week. And the one that I particularly like for campaigns, and not only campaigns, but for those people that are here on the call about a party unit, is Best Practice Digital. And he comes out with some really just basic facts and tools and things that you can use to further our cause. And so because Eric is working on the right, we trust what Eric is telling us all the time. So unless, let's see, is there any?
I just dropped a link to that newsletter in there for folks if they want to go sign up. It's bestpracticedigital.com. Yep.
And so I'm just going to, like I said, I'm going to just share my screen a little bit and talk just a little bit about us, Buzz 360, have just, and I'm going to be talking about this, about data-driven action triggers, We are an approved vendor with the RNC, and that's very, we're very blessed to have that relationship. And of course, we have integrated SwipeRed, the award-winning relational organizing app. And something we don't often talk about is Activate Red, which is a volunteer collective calendar. And of course, SwipeRed. These are all the features in the SwipeRed volunteer app. And, you know, friend to friend, peer to peer, all of these features. And that is a back-to-back award-winning tool, both on the right and on the left, best use in field. So let's talk about ballot growth. So we have dynamic audiences, a target dynamic audience. So the way our product is structured, when we add somebody to an audience, they come on and off based on an attribute. And if there's a voting history, we can have a trigger that is fired off. The messages, we can have vote early message, persuasion, those triggers, they can trigger an email, a text message, neighborhood gathering, a SwipeRed message, all of those persuasion type messages. And then of course, when they can put the message out, it is ballot chasing. So this is a diagram we put together, and it just gives you a little bit of a flow on what the ballot growth campaign would look like. So we set up a message. We have now message templates with the appropriate audience and the appropriate type, whether that be a text or SwipeRed or email, whichever you want to use. We set up triggers for the ballot requested, the ballot and the messages. So we set up that trigger for the ballot returned. Those can run automatically or manually. And once that data comes in, we can see who's requested a ballot and who's returned the ballot. Obviously, the goal is to get them to return the ballot. So the data-driven triggers, we built these triggers based on data that we're receiving from the RNC. Now, if you have another data source, that's fine, but we use the RNC data. Now, that data comes in and it says, okay, the voter has requested a ballot. And subsequently, when they return the ballot, those triggers can make the tags go on and off. And you can see the history. You can see daily when the votes are coming in. The dynamic audience, again, puts the people on and off those dynamic audiences and removes the tags to take them off. All kinds of different messages type. SwipeRed obviously is a big one. So you can have, hey, ask 3 friends to vote. That's based on a tag that comes on and off as people return their ballot or request a ballot. We can have a text message. Again, you can have a draft or a template to send out to people wherever they are in that ballot chase journey. And at the end, when they return their ballot, we want to make sure that we add the tag ballot returned and a thank you. So they come off the audience and the message would be sent out, thank you for voting. And obviously now they're off the ballot growth journey. I hope today has been useful. I think it really has. I'm very excited that we had Eric join us today. You got his contact information. If you have any questions, here's my contact information. Next session, we are going to be having an attorney that is an expert in legal affairs for texting. That should be interesting. So look for that information coming shortly. Again, thank you for joining us today. It was really as a pleasure, always talking to people and, you know, making sure that we can help in getting our cause and our message out. Thank you.